흐뭇해하시더라고요. 그때부터 어머니의 삶이 다시 시작이 된 것 같고 지팡이를 안 짚기 시작하셨어요. 그게 진짜 놀라운 변화인 것 같습니다.
어르신들이 운동을 통해서 노년을 건강한 생활을 할 수 있게끔 도와주는 게 바로 저는 태권도라고 생각이 듭니다.
Not only did Mother experience this change, but her fellow teammates also felt reborn due to the dramatic change in their lives.
너무 좋아요. 온 세상을 다 얻은 것 같죠. 제가 태권도 전도사가 된 것 같아요.
열정이 높으신 분이죠. 그 가족 전체가 태권도 가족입니다. 아주 화목하고 건강이 넘치는 대한민국의 대표적인 태권도 가족이 아닌가 싶습니다.
We're a family that loves practicing Taekwondo, so we've embarked on a new challenge.
사실 저희 가족들이 아픔이 정말 많습니다. 제가 아침에 일어났는데 반신이 마비가 왔었고 저희 아이는 태어나자마자 인공 심박기를 달았었고 정상으로도 살기 힘들다는 진단을 받았었지만 이 아이를 보면서 기적이라는 것을 알게 됐거든요. 그래서 태권도는 행복 그 자체입니다.
태권도를 해서 강해지니까 더 자신감이 올라가고 행복해요.
I believe Taekwondo is a blessing from heaven. It has made us hopeful for the future. Every day, we're excited to see what's in store for us tomorrow. Practice it with your family. Taekwondo brings happiness.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
Overseas voting for the 21st presidential election began today in more than 100 countries around the world. Voters in New Zealand were the first to cast their ballots, while many more are expected to exercise their rights from across the globe over the next few days. With the election 2 weeks away, the DP's Lee Jae-myung and the PPP's Kim Moon-soo held rallies in the capital region, a major battleground, for a second day. Reform Party's Jun-seok once again dismissed a possible candidacy merger. Korea and the U.S. will hold technical discussions on Tuesday in Washington, hoping to address U.S. tariffs, with a focus on 6 areas, including balanced trade and non-tariff measures. It's May 20th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jun-seok. Overseas voters begin heading to polling stations on Tuesday. It began here in the Asia Pacific, while many more are expected to make their voices heard from different parts of the world over the next few days. This time, more polling stations have been added, meaning more voters can exercise their rights overseas. Our political correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
Overseas voting for Korea's presidential election has begun, as ballots open Tuesday in 118 countries. Some 182 polling stations at Korean embassies, consulates, diplomatic missions and offices will be open through Sunday local time from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The first votes were cast at the edge of the world in New Zealand. Cho Won-hyuk, a resident and lecturer living in Wellington, says some wait hours for the polling station to open, and many travel from regions outside the capital with anticipation and a sense of unity.
For example, I already mentioned people flew from different regions to physically vote in person. So that means everyone in the embassy, they really appreciate and then sort of in the community, we know each other. So it's really more welcoming, and it's not just an administrative process. So whenever I go to the embassy or other diplomatic missions to vote for Korean elections, I'll feel really welcome, and my vote really counts.
The 258,000 Koreans registered to vote abroad this year account for just 0.6% of the total Korean electorate based on 2022 figures. But their political engagement and efforts to ensure their rights of suffrage are crucial to South Korean democracy. Last year's parliamentary election saw a record turnout of 62.8% among overseas voters.
Symbolically, still this overseas voting is important as a critical mechanisms for integration of Korean diaspora community into the nation's democratic processes, but also this might enhance the legitimacy of Korea's democratic system, because overseas votes mean that the system tries to include more diverse perspectives, even from overseas.
To ensure more Koreans can enjoy their right to vote in this election, 39 additional polling stations have been installed in regions where the number of overseas nationals exceeds 30,000. In the United States, these include the states of New York, California, Massachusetts and Texas, opening from Thursday to Saturday. Specific locations and hours can be found on each embassy or consulate website. When heading out to the ballot booth, voters must bring photo ID. Those who have immigrated or acquired permanent residency must also present proof that they remain solely Korean nationals, such as visa documents and permanent residency cards. Requirements for each country of residence is available on the respective embassy or consulate website. The last overseas polling station this election will close in Hawaii before sunset. Ballots will be returned to Korea via diplomatic pouches to be counted together with domestic votes after election day voting ends. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Turning to the campaign trail, the DP's presidential candidate held a virtual meeting with overseas voters today, the first day of overseas voting, to listen to their difficulties. Later in the day, he campaigned in Gyeonggi-do province near the border area with North Korea. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Marking the first day of overseas voting, the Democratic Party's presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung encouraged overseas voters, saying a vote was stronger than a bullet. Ahead of a rally on Tuesday, he held a one-hour virtual meeting with overseas Koreans. During a discussion, overseas voters from various countries shared the common difficulties they faced, especially inconvenience when voting.
Botswana has no Korean embassy or consulate general, so Koreans here have to go to South Africa to vote.
Lee Jae-myung emphasized that appropriate measures should be put in place to ease voting for those living abroad and introduce several ways to do so.
Overseas Koreans currently have to register and vote separately, but with a better system, both could be done at once. While some worry about mail-in voting security, countries like the US use it, and Korea already allows similar voting for people with mobility issues or those in hospital. I wonder if it's fair to not allow overseas Koreans to vote by mail.
He also suggested setting up temporary polling stations with temporary staff, saying that given the high personal costs voters currently face, the government should provide this kind of support. On Tuesday, the DP candidate continued his campaign in Gyeonggi-do province, where he served as governor. He held rallies in the cities of Ujeongbu and Goyang, as well as Paju, which borders North Korea. During his visit to Ujeongbu, he highlighted peace and security and promised to support the development of the northern part of Gyeonggi-do, which has long been restricted by heavy regulations.
Hasn't this northern region made big sacrifices for the country's security over many years? Those sacrifices should be properly compensated, so people from now on don't feel it's unfair.
At his final stop of the day in Gimpo, he pledged to remove tolls on the Ilsan Bridge, which connects Gimpo and Goyang. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The PPP's candidate has also been touring the capital region. He's focusing on a message claiming that he's more ethical than his major rival. This as Kim continues to make efforts to merge with the Reform Party. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the details.
Touring around the capital and the surrounding areas, People Power Party candidate Kim Mun-soo on Tuesday focused on ethics, emphasizing his DP rival Lee Jae-myung's legal risks. He tied in the message with the recent ramped-up security for Lee, saying the DP is using its supermajority on the floor to now make bulletproof legislation to protect Lee from legal risks.
I'll be an ethical president. I will never wear a bulletproof vest. I would get rid of the bulletproof glass and never try to pass bulletproof legislation.
Also during his rallies, he compared his two Gyeonggi-do province governor terms to the one his rival Lee served. He said it was he who created Gyeonggi-do's economic zone, such as Pyeongtaek's Samsung Electronics plant, the largest chip plant in the world. Earlier in the day, he also shared his pledges on fostering culture and cultural activities as he visited a culture and arts organization. His major pledge was to make community culture centers across the nation accessible to anyone within 10 minutes to enhance cultural and art activities. Meanwhile, he also continued his efforts to convince another conservative candidate, Jun-seok of the Reform Party, to merge. Facing the media, he sent a clear message.
He used to lead our party. As you've seen at the debate, there's absolutely no difference between us. Also, it was our party's problem that caused Jun-seok to leave. So I think it's right to be together.
Jun-seok continued to reject the offer, saying it doesn't make sense. But a movement to form an anti-Lee Jae-myung bloc started as the PPP's interim leader Kim Yong-tae met with the new Future Democratic Party's chairman for talks on future cooperation. This is a new party made up of former DP members who were not in Lee Jae-myung's faction. The leader of this party said the PPP's constitutional reform proposal of shortening the next president's term to 3 years, with the next one starting a new 4-year term with re-election, aligns with theirs. In the meantime, the PPP's Kim Yong-tae also proposed a debate for the First Lady prospects, but the DP and Reform Party candidates immediately criticized the idea to turn it down. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok remained active in the southwestern city of Gwangju for a second day. Addressing the audience there, he spoke of pursuing the spirit of former President Roh Moo-hyun, who sought unity between traditionally conservative and liberal regions in the southwest and the eastern parts of the country. Lee was also at Jeonnam National University to touch base with the student body there as part of his campus cafeteria outreach. Earlier, he sat down with the Gwangju Mayor Kang Ki-jung and pledged support for AI and future mobility industries. A South Korean trade delegation has departed for the U.S. to engage in more technical talks on tariffs. Moon Hae-ryun covers the agenda ahead.
A South Korean delegation will begin working-level talks with the U.S. trade representative in Washington on Tuesday local time as part of broader efforts to finalize what's being dubbed the July package. With both sides aiming for a comprehensive trade deal by July 8th, Seoul is expected to focus on minimizing the steep tariffs on its key exports. However, time is tight, with the U.S. negotiating with its other trade partners and South Korea's presidential election just around the corner. 6 key topics are on the agenda for this round of technical discussions: balanced trade, non-tariff measures, economic security, digital trade, country of origin, and commercial considerations. South Korea plans to use its cooperation in areas like shipbuilding as leverage, with the ultimate goal of lowering the 25% reciprocal tariff rates and the sector-specific tariffs on cars, steel, aluminium, and semiconductors. Meanwhile, the U.S. is expected to push back with its own demands, with concerns over its trade deficit and various non-tariff barrier issues. The Trump administration has pointed to a wide range of non-tariff barriers in Korea, such as restrictions on importing beef from cattle older than 30 months, as hindering American exports to the country. Seoul has since responded by saying there were few barriers hindering trade with the United States, and experts say that some concessions could be made for low-impact sectors in order to gain leverage in more critical areas.
We should be ready to ease non-tariff barriers on items like agricultural and livestock products, especially those with low import volumes. In return, we must push hard to secure U.S. tariff cuts on high-value exports, like automobiles and semiconductors.
This comes after high-level ministerial meetings during the APEC Trade Summit in Jeju last week, where South Korea's Trade Minister An Duk-gun followed up his meeting with the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer with a press conference. He revealed that a ministerial-level interim review is scheduled for mid-June to finalize the results of the negotiations, meaning that important decisions related to the trade agreement will be made by the next administration. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Following last week's talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul, U.S. President Trump spoke with his Russia and Ukrainian counterparts, respectively, about peace in Ukraine. Putin called for the elimination of what he called the root causes of the war, while Zelensky said decisions should not be made without Kyiv. Bae Yun-ju tells us more.
Following the much-anticipated call between leaders from Washington and Moscow, U.S. President Donald Trump said he made progress during his conversation on Monday with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. He proclaimed on his social media that the call went very well and that Russia and Ukraine had agreed to immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire, without providing details on when that will happen.
We just spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and I think some progress has been made.
Putin, who described the call as meaningful and frank, said Russia is ready to work with Ukraine on a memorandum on a possible future peace agreement. But he did not address demands from the U.S. and European countries for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, meaning no major breakthrough in ending the war.
At the same time, I would like to note that in general, Russia's position is clear. The main thing for us is to eliminate the root causes of this crisis.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he also spoke with Trump before the American leaders' call with Putin. He called for an unconditional ceasefire, while urging stronger U.S. sanctions if Russia is not ready to end the war.
I asked him, before his conversation with Putin, not to make decisions about Ukraine without us. We agreed that we would get in touch after his conversation with Putin.
Zelensky also urged Washington not to distance itself from peace talks, saying he is considering a high-level meeting between Ukraine, Russia, the U.S., and European countries. This comes after Trump said the conditions of a peace deal could only be negotiated between Russia and Ukraine, possibly with the help of the Pope, leading to speculation that this signals a possible shift in his stance, that he was leaving the two countries to find a deal without the U.S. as a broker. 배은지, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, Israel has vowed to seize control of the entire Gaza Strip, while at the same time allowing some humanitarian aid into the enclave. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The Israeli military, which recently launched Operation Gideon's Chariots, aimed at recapturing the Gaza Strip, announced it has struck some 160 targets, including Hamas infrastructure. However, according to Al Jazeera, airstrikes also targeted several hospitals across the enclave. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video statement on the same day, vowing to make progress amid fierce fighting, adding that Israel will take control of the entire Gaza Strip. The remark was slammed by Britain, France, and Canada, who are critical of Israel's expansion of its war, as they vowed a concrete response if Israel's campaign continues. Also following pressure from around the globe over the blocking of any humanitarian aid into the region, Israel has begun allowing some trucks carrying necessities.
Today, Israel is facilitating the entry of trucks with baby food into Gaza. In the coming days, Israel will facilitate the entry of dozens of aid trucks.
The Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry, Eden Bartal, said Israel always complies with international law and with its obligations and statements. However, he was critical of the recent condemnation, saying the international community must decide whether to side with Israel or Hamas. He added that the aid that began coming in will only cover a few days. The Foreign Ministry official also stressed that the humanitarian aid is to help the population, not to support Hamas. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean music industry leaders have once again earned global recognition for driving global success outside the United States. Billboard's 2025 Global Power Players list, released Monday, featured top names including SM Entertainment co-CEOs Jang Chul-hyuk and Gwangju. The list highlights the agency's global impact from aespa's successful world tour to the success of British boy band Dear Alice, ranking #2 on the UK's music chart. Hive chairman Bang Si-hyuk also made the list, recognized for his powerhouse lineup of stars, including BTS. Although Hangang's Nobel Literature Prize win may have sparked a reading craze, it was difficult for visually impaired people to enjoy it. To help those people, one actor, who is also a publisher, began converting audiobooks into audio plays. Cha Yun-kyung has the story.
My First Summer Gwangju, written by novelist Kim Geum-hee, is the first work from the audio project run by actor Park Jeong-min. Park began this project to find a way to give a book as a gift to his father, who had lost his sight. He released the audio play first before publishing the book in paperback, targeting the visually impaired as the first readers.
I thought visually impaired readers might not receive books as a gift firsthand, so I wanted to give books as a gift for visually impaired readers firsthand.
Park's audio plays are different from standard audiobooks. They add more details and descriptions than the original audiobook released after the source book's publication. Starting with actress Go Min-si, many famous actors participated in the project with voice acting to make a great piece of radio drama.
While I was working on the piece, all the characters were speaking to me with my voice. Although they were all different figures, now I can hear the perfect voice for each character.
This is great news for the visually impaired who may have limits on listening to standard audiobooks or reading Braille books. There are not enough books in Braille for the blind, and it is also hard to access institutions that possess them, so demand for audiobooks is growing. Visually impaired readers cannot find the books they want easily. Also, they have to listen to audiobooks with an unnatural text-to-single voice service.
I think this is a new type of genre like a movie for the visually impaired, which makes me feel like a visual handicap is not a handicap anymore.
The paperback version of My First Summer Gwangju will be published for the non-disabled on May 8th. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
NASA Artemis 2 mission plans are well underway, with the manned lunar exploration set for next year. What's exciting is that a South Korean-developed CUBE satellite will be joining the mission to monitor cosmic radiation. Lee Yoon-jin has the details.
NASA's Artemis 2 test flight is scheduled to launch in April of 2026 and will be the first crewed mission to the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. Now, South Korea is making significant strides in space exploration, with the Korea Aerospace Administration signing an agreement with NASA on May 2nd to mount a Korean-made CUBE satellite on board the mission's spacecraft.
CASA and NASA signed an Artemis research agreement. The agreement prioritizes research cooperation in 7 areas, including lunar landers, space communications, navigation, and astronaut support tools and application systems.
The Korean-made CUBE satellite set to join NASA's Artemis 2 mission is the K-RAD CUBE, roughly the size of a backpack weighing 19 kilograms. Once deployed into high Earth orbit, the satellite will separate from the rocket and enter the Van Allen radiation belts, which are packed with high-energy charged particles. The K-RAD CUBE will monitor cosmic radiation and analyze its effects on astronauts, a critical area of research for human presence on the Moon and Mars. But because of the intense radiation, missions through the area will be brief. The satellite is set to conduct measurements for about 28 hours, although depending on conditions, that could be extended to up to 2 weeks.
The K-RAD CUBE will also carry next-generation semiconductor multi-chip modules and memory semiconductor chips designed to assess radiation effects in space.
Of the 54 countries that have signed the Artemis Accords, only Korea and Germany have so far signed formal agreements for the Artemis 2 mission. Taking advantage of the unique opportunity, data collected from the K-RAD CUBE will be used for various space activities and further future research. Lee Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
The weather has returned back to early summer again. The highest temperature in Seoul rose up to 26 degrees Celsius, but with the high humidity, it felt even hotter at 28 degrees. The southern parts of the country, read on the map, were as hot as 30 degrees today. It will be even hotter tomorrow, with Seoul reaching up to 28 degrees, the highest temperature this spring so far. More rain is expected in many areas of the east tomorrow. Estimated rainfall will be up to 40 millimeters in eastern parts of Gyeonggi-do province and Gangwon-do province, and up to 60 millimeters in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. Tomorrow morning will start warm at around 20 degrees all over the country. Highs will move up to 29 degrees in Daejeon, 30 degrees in Chuncheon. UV rays continue to be very strong during the day. Please protect yourself in advance when you go outside. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
제21대 대통령 재외선거.
세계 어느 곳에 있어도
내가 국가대표라는 마음으로
누구보다 땀 흘리죠. 지금이 국가대표임을
보여줄 기회.
대한민국 국민의 권리.
대한민국 국민의 의무.
반드시
투표합니다. 국가를 위한 대통령 투표. 제21대 대통령 재외선거. 중앙선거관리위원회.
저희가 매일매일 자동차를 타고 일상생활에서도 쉽게 사용을 하는데 그런 자동차에서 타이어는 계속해서 버려지고 있거든요. 전 세계적으로 10억 개 이상 버려지고 있는데 특히 소각 처리될 경우에는 대기오염 물질들이 여러 가지가 나오게 되고 매립됐을 때는 지하수나 토양오염 물질들이 많이 방출되게 됩니다. 저희는 그런 타이어들을 어떻게 잘 처리할지 좀 고민을 했었습니다. 타이어가 가지고 있는 접지력이나 내마모성이 좀 우수하다고 생각을 했고요. 저희는 타이어 하나로 신발을 3.5켤레 정도를 만들 수가 있어요. 그렇게 됐을 때 저희의 신발 한 켤레는 타이어에서 발생되는 탄소를 8.9kg 정도 저감할 수 있는 그런 효과가 있습니다. 이 일을 시작하기 전에는 타이어가 그렇게 많이 버려지는지도 몰랐고 그리고 버려진 타이어들이 환경 파괴적으로 처분되는 것도 사실은 잘은 몰랐어요. 점점 더 적체가 되고 있거든요, 타이어들이. 시간이 지나면 지날수록 더 큰 문제가 될 것 같다는 생각에 지금 일을 하고 있습니다. 타이어마다 모양이나 패턴이 굉장히 많이 다양한데 내가 가지고 있는 신발이 다른 신발들과 모양이 다를 수 있다는 점, 그런 점도 재미 요소로 좀 다가가고 있습니다. 저희도 그런 계기를 보다 많은 분들께 하나 더 제공해 주고자 매일매일 신는 신발을 만들겠다고 한 것도 있어요. 조금 더 주변을 살펴보면은 나 스스로도 조금 더 환경 보호에 참여할 수 있는 일이나 물건들이 더 있지 않을까 그렇게 찾아보시면 어떨까 싶습니다. 나는 다시 달릴 수 있게 만드는 그리너입니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. The world's two largest economies, America and China, have called a fragile truce in their high-stakes tariff war. Following a surprise agreement in Geneva, both sides agreed to drastically lower mutual tariffs for 90 days, buying time for further negotiations. But the clock is already ticking, and the global market isn't waiting. Shipping rates have spiked, businesses are rushing deliveries, and countries like South Korea are caught in a new diplomatic and economic balancing act. At the APEC meetings in Jeju, those tensions spilled into open, with China sharply criticizing U.S. Trade policy and calling for an extension of the truce. All these developments come as South Korea is working to navigate the shifting power dynamics and prepare for July's critical bilateral package talks with Washington. To help us break into these updates at this year's APEC, we are joined in the studio by Min Jung-hoon, professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Welcome.
My pleasure.
And also joining us online is Jeff Moon, president of China Moon Strategies LLC and former assistant U.S. Trade Representative for China. Great to see you.
Thank you.
So let's start with Mr. Moon. With the Geneva Agreement now in effect and U.S.-China tariffs temporarily lowered, U.S. importers are rushing to front-load shipments and markets are reacting sharply. Do you think we're already seeing signs that the truce is shifting some trade patterns? And also tell us what kind of risks loom as the 90-day deadline approaches?
President Trump's decision at Geneva to lower American tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to about 30% has removed the effective tariff embargo, suddenly allowed goods to flow again, and is the cause of the front-loading that you described. You're right, however, that tariffs are affecting not just short-term market behavior, but also long-term trading patterns. Export manufacturers in China are gradually moving production to other countries because they see the deteriorating U.S.-China relationship is unlikely to improve anytime soon. Some Chinese companies are also shifting production to third countries to both ease overcapacity and to avoid American tariffs. American officials are lobbying counterparts in Korea and elsewhere to crack down on Chinese transshipment. And I expect we're going to hear a lot more about that issue in the months to come. Transshipment is an emerging issue, and I think it will become increasingly prominent this year in the U.S.-China agenda and in the U.S. relationship with other countries as well.
Right. So even though we're in the initial phases of the 90-day deadline, the shift in trade patterns seems to be already evident. Now, building on that, just days after the Geneva deal, Professor Min, China used the forum to sharply criticize U.S. Unilateral tariffs. Do you think how should we interpret China's strategy here?
Personally, I think that China is trying to take the spot the U.S. left and establish itself as a new leader of the free and multilateral trading system when it responded to Trump government's America First to trade policy. So it means that China is trying to take over what U.S. used to take in the global market system. As you know, U.S. had been the leader of the free trade system for over 50 years before President Trump took the White House. So it is also true that U.S. achieved economic growth and prosperity under the global economic system, but in the past decades, U.S. realized that the system did not work for the country anymore, as it lost its manufacturing force capabilities and competitiveness. So Trump government wants to bring factories and facilities back to the U.S. soil and restore its manufacturing industries by using tariffs aggressively. So what Trump government is doing in the trade sector is making other countries confused, and U.S. is like giving up its position as the leader of the free market system. And China is moving actively to take over the spot and is trying to enhance its standing as alternative leader of the global economic community. However, it's not clear whether and how other countries would accept China as a new leader of the system, because they got a little bit sour experience with China in the past. For example, European countries perceive that they needed to maintain their trade relations with China based on their economic benefits, but they are not eager to improving their cooperation with China seriously. Due to the lack of their trust or credibility on China. In addition, they are also worried the possibility that if the U.S.-China relations got worse, then the European market would be affected by the Chinese cheap items.
So though China is definitely having a strong push, we'll have to see how much it gains trust and credibility from other countries. Now, in parallel to this diplomatic signaling, we saw a dramatic spike in freight costs and rapid logistical shifts. Mr. Moon, how do you interpret this sudden market reaction? Do you think it's a sign of underlying instability or just a practical rush to, beat the deadline?
I see much of this as a logical response by the business community to constantly changing market conditions. Logistical costs are increasing and conditions on the ground are changing in response to the unpredictable Trump policies that shape market opportunities. On the one hand, it's disturbing that President Trump's tariffs have created so much uncertainty that businessmen have no choice but to react on a day-to-day basis to his policy changes, as well as the inevitable Chinese retaliation. But on the other hand, the business community's ability to react quickly and to adapt reflects resilience. That's admirable. I think it's that resilience that explains why bilateral U.S.-China trade exceeding $500 billion a year continues despite the many stresses that we continue to see in the market.
Right. So the spike definitely shows both logistical urgency and also highlights market uncertainty as well. Now, as we're seeing Beijing attempt to shape the narrative further, China's state media has recently publicly called for an extension to this 90-day truce, saying the time is kind of too short. Professor Min, what do you make of this move? Do you think it's an early negotiation tactic to go through the 90 days, or a sign that Beijing is already trying to, shift the rules?
Basically, I think that China seems to have some confidence in terms of making negotiations with the United States, and I think it also shows the Chinese intention that it would fully take advantage of the negotiation and tries to secure enough time before reaching a satisfying agreement for China. But as you know, when President Trump imposed the tariffs to all countries, China, unlike all the other countries, only China resisted strongly from the beginning. Specifically, when the U.S. imposed the tariffs, China also imposed the retaliatory tariffs and took other non-tariff countermeasures. And China resisted, and the tariffs imposed by President Trump hit the American economy hard. Domestic discontent and concerns emerged in the country, and then President Trump took measures to postpone the tariffs for 90 days. And he then moved forward and wanted to talk to China. And China domestically promoted the negotiation with the United States as a victory. And China showed its strong intention. It would not give in to the United States in the tariff war. And through the strong posture, China tries to improve China's standing internationally. And as a matter of fact, I think that China is fully aware of what President Trump wants from the tariff negotiation. Specifically, China knows that President Trump could be satisfied if China increases imports of American products like the agricultural products and energy, and reduce the trade surplus on U.S. But China also wants to gain political and diplomatic advantages by showing that it's a very tough counterpart during the negotiation process. So, of all, I think China is trying to fully take advantage of the situation on behalf of the Chinese own strategic interests.
So it seems like a classic move by Beijing to maintain leverage. Now, so in line with this 90-day extension scheme, recent market surveys suggest many global investors now expect the U.S.-China tariff rate to settle at 30% within 6 months. Mr. Moon, how credible do you think this projection is? And what long-term economic adjustments do you think should South Korean industries be preparing for?
Well, President Trump lowered the U.S. tariff rate from 145% because that tariff level imposed a de facto trade embargo. Many people in Washington think that trade becomes impossible once tariff rates hit 60%. 30% is well below that level, but I'm not confident that tariff rates are going to settle there because I think that the prohibitive tariff rate varies from sector to sector and product to product. I saw a press report, for example, about how artificial Christmas trees from China sent to the U.S. ceased to be profitable at the 20% tariff level. And 95% of artificial Christmas trees in the U.S. come from China. So either the U.S. government will have to lower that tariff rate for those products to 20% or lower, or American consumers will not have Christmas trees in December. So the bottom line here is that the 30% level may be acceptable in some sectors and allow business to go forward, but that full two-way trade is going to be impossible without greater tariff flexibility.
Right. So it could force major industrial adjustments depending on each sector. Let's also touch upon South Korea's role now. Professor Min, as the APEC chair, South Korea played a key role in moderating tensions and securing a joint statement despite opposing views from U.S. and China. What does this achievement say about Korea's position and diplomacy in terms of Indo-Pacific trade architecture?
Well, the title of APEC 2025 Korea this year is Building a Sustainable Tomorrow, Connect, Innovative, and Prosper. And during the meetings, the APEC trade ministers expressed the concerns of fundamental changes, the challenges facing the global trading environment, and they agreed about the importance of the World Trade Organization, WTO. And in the joint statement, the 21 APEC member economies pledged to help the restoration of the multilateral trading system centered on the WTO and cooperate in responding to uncertainty in global trade conditions. But it was also reported that it would not be easy to secure the joint statement, mainly because of the point of view that the Trump government has on the global trading system. As you know, Trump government prefers to have bilateral negotiations over the multilateral cooperation, and it's not satisfied with what WTO has done for the global trading system. So it was expected that the U.S. would not agree with a joint statement, like the APEC members would work together to restore the multilateral trading system centered on WTO. And as the chair this year, South Korea, I think, played a key role in moderating tensions and securing the joint statement. In fact, as an open trade country, South Korea itself needs an international trade order based on the universal norms, values, and principles. So it tried to persuade all the member countries, including the United States, and couldn't make them agree to the last minute. So again, most of all, the fact that the Trump government, the United States, agreed to joint statement, I think is important and could contribute to reducing the uncertainty of the global trading system.
Right, so it seems Korea's role would be pivotal in balancing U.S.-China tensions. Now, on the surface, the APEC joint statement reaffirmed multilateralism and WTO reform as well, but many countries still are skeptical about this. Mr. Moon, do you think this kind of rhetoric still carries some economic weight, or is it largely symbolic?
I've participated in APEC in years past, both as a U.S. official and as an American businessman, and in my experience, I can't recall the joint statement ever having any practical impact. And the reason is that APEC plays an important role because it brings together countries on both sides of the Pacific Ocean to discuss issues and programs where consensus is possible. It's a useful venue for sharing ideas and especially best practices that country representatives can take back and implement in their countries. Because APEC is a consensus organization, it tends to avoid controversial issues like the current trade wars. Those issues, quite frankly, are best left to other venues. So to answer your question directly, I think it's fine for APEC to state general goals for the future, but I see statements about contentious trade issues as really inconsistent with the purpose and the spirit of the organization.
Right, so the multilateral rhetoric still seems to struggle to translate into concrete action, and that will be a challenge moving forward. Now, Mr. Moon, let's look a deep closer at South Korea's bilateral front. South Korea-U.S. high-level meeting was held on May 16th, the second since the April 2+2 talks, and this marked a critical checkpoint. There are industry-specific issues like shipbuilding and semiconductors reportedly came up. How likely do you think is it that South Korea can extract tariff relief on these sectors by offering some better cooperation?
American and Korean negotiators are currently aiming to complete a new trade agreement by July. We really have only limited information about those discussions, but the U.S. has indicated it expects that the current 10% reciprocal tariffs will probably remain in effect for all countries. My guess is that the reciprocal tariffs for Korea will not rise above that 10% level. The U.S. also wants to discuss non-tariff barriers, such as regulations on autos, rice, and beef imports, as well as currency policy. Meanwhile, Korea has raised concerns about sectoral tariffs, especially with regard to autos and steel. The recent U.S.-UK agreement relaxed some sectoral tariffs, so that may give some hope to Korean negotiators. In any event, however, I expect that the two countries will announce a big package that will cover a wide variety of issues, including the semiconductor and shipbuilding cooperation that you mentioned.
Then staying with this, Professor Min, how would you assess the broader effect of this U.S.-China deal on Washington's tone or strategy in terms of talks with South Korea?
Personally, I think that the U.S.-China deal could make a positive impact on the negotiations between South Korea and U.S. Currently, I think U.S. is in a situation where it should finish the negotiations with many countries and achieve satisfying outcomes during the 90-day tariff deferral. In particular, the negative public opinion on tariffs in the United States pushed, I think, Trump government to quickly come up with negotiation results. And among them, the negotiation with China received the most attention, but it was expected that it could take long and not easy due to Chinese strong resistance. So in order to achieve quick results, Trump government designated the 5 friendly countries, including the United Kingdom, India, Japan, Australia, and South Korea, as priority negotiation countries and tried to move forward as quickly as possible. Fortunately, the negotiation with the United Kingdom, which was considered a relatively easy negotiation, was concluded quickly, but other countries, including Japan and India, wanted to take more time and negotiate carefully based on Chinese responses. The reaction was a good example for other countries. And as the negotiations did not move forward as expected, Trump government became impatient, and this situation, I think, seemed to affect its more flexible attitude in negotiations with China. And as negotiations with China began and both U.S. and China agreed to lower tariffs more than expected, U.S. economy could reduce uncertainty to some degree, and Trump government felt somewhat relieved. So the progress in the negotiation with China would reduce American burden, Trump's government burden, to conclude the negotiations with South Korea quickly, and will allow U.S. to show more flexible stance in lowering tariffs imposed on its ally, South Korea. So I think that the South Korea needed to watch the progress of negotiations with other major countries like China and Japan, and prepare sufficiently for the tariff deal with the U.S. without rushing to the finish line.
So it did actually create a window of flexibility, and we will have to have better negotiations moving forward with the next administration as well. But as for now, we will have to conclude our discussion at this point. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Mr. Moon.
Thank you.
And Professor Min.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
Celebrates the 80th anniversary of liberation. A place filled with culture, history, and diverse experiences. This is the Independent